Who here is working with machine learning or actually attempting to build with it? No? Okay, and who actually understands what a blockchain is as a data structure and as well as the underlying technology under cryptocurrencies? Okay, so I see more of a generalist and enterprise crowd, so I'll try to keep it not too technical. Would you like to learn about some of the use cases for sustainable development goals, or would you like to learn about smart cities, or would you like to learn about how two completely different cultures and technology like AI and blockchain, how they can be integrated for better financial inclusion? 1, 2, 3. Three? Awesome. Okay, great. That's one of my favorite topics in the world. So I am a journalist, not a technologist, but I'm self-taught. I was a journalist for 25 years, but I'm also a third-generation serial entrepreneur. I was gifted this back-end bot because I was a journalist, and they said, you know, we have an AI that writes other AI, and we think it can track fake news. Can you take it over, build the revenue models, build the training corpus, and build a team around it and be our CEO? So I said, great, yes. And I went away and I studied all the AI companies, and I came back a month later and I said, I've got really bad news for you. There's no such thing as fake news. There's only a set of facts under a false assumption, right? And with that false assumption is interpretation. And interpretation is mathematically impossible to model, right? So how do you go about doing this? So I decided to take it the other way. I was going to pull my classifiers from neurolinguistics and look at online behavior of how people were consuming information, and decided I was only tracking bullshit, right? I'm only tracking, because there's a tell anytime that you're trying to evade a linear logic, and there's definitely a tell when you're trying to lie or hide something. And then I was going to take that data and I was going to run it through sentiment analysis machine learning that would create vectors about the emotional intent behind the use of those words and the ordering. So then I went about building my training corpus. Now, how many of you know that data is now worth more than gold, right? Excellent. So at the turn of the century, at the first industrial revolution, we had a commodified-based, industrial-based economy, right? And then fast forward to the 80s, right? We have the World Wide Web. It's really crappy, but everyone's excited about it because then it went to the information economy. And the Web 2.0 gave us, the knowledge economy, meaning that you were worth more because of who you knew and what you knew, what value that you added. Now we are in a data-driven economy. Everything that we do in modern life kicks up billions of dollars worth of data. And how do you clean it? How do you classify it? How do you make it into a format that you can then teach robots, right? So in machine learning, most of machine learning right now is based on what's called deductive reasoning, is or is not, the binary questions. That's why it takes optimally about 100,000 data sets to conclusively prove, right, if something is a cat, which is the most famous one, or a dog, because it runs through all the variances. So, I went about to, build my training corpus. Now, keep in mind, I'd worked in Silicon Valley for 4 years, focused on AI. And so I was coming up on year 5 and had discovered blockchains. And I did what everybody does. I built a data scraper, right? And then I looked at, how to format coding of those binary questions, what we call classifiers, into a JSON format so that I can then communicate with my machine. This is a hideous, painstaking, and very expensive process. Right? It'll cost you X amount to build it. It'll cost you 2 to 3X of that to train it. And then meanwhile, you're snowballing data, and it'll cost you triple, quadruple that to have the analytics to make the most of it. And meanwhile, you have all this data that's snowballing, and you have to keep it somewhere. You have to keep it safe, secure, right? And it's not just like you train it and it goes. You have to rinse and repeat, re-clean your data, reclassify it, and run through to see what you can get to about a 90% accuracy rate. So that's where I got really, really stuck, right? It's one thing to go from learning how something works to then actually learning how to, which is the technical part. So I came back and I was coding, and I thought I had learned about blockchains from this woman in the women's washroom of a tech conference. And she's like, what do you do? And I was like, I've got an AI platform. The rudimentary backend is built, and I'm building the training corpus. She's like, I want a chatbot. I'm like, great, minimum $3 to $5 million seed. Good luck, right? And she's like, wow, that's crazy. I was like, yeah, what do you do? And she goes, I have a Bitcoin starter kit. I'm like, whoa, I don't want anything to do with that baby buying Bitcoin. She's like, no, you don't understand. It's bigger than that. The underlying technology is going to change the world. And so I want you to work with me. She said, if you have nerds that are willing to stare at a screen for 12 to 14 hours a day, I can show them how to make between $25,000 to $30,000 a day I was like, that's crazy. But what about this data structure? Because that's my main kind of like boogeyman right now. So she would send me links, you know, and intel and invite me to meetups and conferences. And there was a period of about 3 months that I was working knowingly in unknowingness, if you understand what that means. You're reading, you know, you're reading through textbooks, you're watching YouTube videos at 1.5 speed. You're basically a brain in a jar with hand extensions, right? Trying to soak in everything. And finally, I was just like, holy shit, this is amazing. This is amazing because it's immutable. It makes every human transaction transparent if you understand what to look for. So I did everything that I could to learn about it, and I decided that I was going to crowdsource the data that's needed to train my AI. What I was going to do is I was going to build an ecosystem and a tokenomics model that allowed people to give me better validated data based on the citation of the sources. And then if the machine learning validated those results, right, then I was going to reward them with tokens that they can then trade for Ether and then onto currency, or they could hold on to it, amass it, play it like a video game, just right or left. Is this a cat? Is this a cat? Is this a dog? Is this a dog? And they can hold on to it and then use that back within the platform to build and train their own AI on demand through crowdsourcing. So we've been working on AI since the 1950s, the Alan Turing test, right? It says if you can't tell if it's a machine, right, that then it's, if you can't tell it's a machine, then it passes as an AI. What I'm telling you is that if you want to design machine learning that's human-centric, human-focused, and that serves or anticipates human needs, because all the machine learning is just pattern recognition and anticipation, right, and matching, then you need, you know, bigger data sets, and that data set must be representative of us all, the human experience. I mean, a very crude example of how that could go wrong is if you just have a bunch of skinny white dudes just clicking yes or no, is this a fireman? It'll come to a firewoman and it'll give you a false report. Said, no, that's not. I mean, that's just very simple, right? So most of us who are working on enterprise level or human-centric AI will agree that the larger the data set, the better your AI. You can train it faster, better, and cheaper if you can validate it. And the best results that you get is always from machine to human interaction for validation. And so if you use a tokenomics model and tokenize parts of that value, then all of a sudden you can get everybody in helping you train and develop your technology and to do public bounties and bug betas so that you're not going after user acquisition. You're saying, you do this anyway. I'm going to reward you with tokens for it, for sharing your data instead of just taking it from you, weaponizing it, and getting you to buy more shit, right? And so that's why it was so revolutionary and extraordinary, was that if you look at every single technology that we've been working on for the last 40, 50 years, they've been kind of like, they would start and then they would go through a dark winter. Because especially with AI, what was happening was that it was just the wrong approach. First, we thought it was the fancy math models that we would then translate into algorithms, which would then, with a smaller data set, that we could train our AI. The reverse ended up being true. But these were theories, right? It's not until the 1990s that we actually started to have, like the late 90s, that we actually had the computational power to be able to test out our theories. Because those are the three pillars of AI, right? It's computational power, the data, and then the algorithm, and something in between that black box, between the back propagation or the learning process. It works or it doesn't, and it takes a lot of trial and error. In order to circumvent that, you can get in front of it and get people to validate the data. And so if you look at AR, VR, AI, all of it seems to be exploding because blockchain technology makes now brings that full circle, being able to tokenize it in the cryptonomics, brings it full circle to be able to crowdsource it and get out of the way of systems of anything that needs a middleman, right? So let me ask you to imagine for a minute that the city that you are living in is becoming a living digital lab, right? There's nothing that says we give up on you and we don't care than a glass box or a bus stop or 311. We call them in 311 in New York. I don't know what you call it in London, right? So basically, it's city services. You download the city app, right? That becomes your proprietary wallet. right? And to allow and give permission for the city to give you messaging and to be able to take a quiz and share your data, they're going to reward you with tokens. If you're a good citizen and you report a pothole or domestic violence, right, they will also reward you with tokens. Now, what can you use those tokens for? Discounts at your merchants that you walk by, that'll push message specials to you, but also how about inventory towards your parking, or how about 10% discounts off your utility bills? Right? How about giant holographic projections that give you city messaging in ways that are artful, but that also makes the city a canvas for local artists and children to then be able to ask and answer directly to the city. So that's some of the things that we're building into the Hoboken Smart City project in New Jersey. It's one of the most advanced P3 models in the world, which means it's public-private partnerships, which means that everybody keeps each other in check. And if it's based on underlying with a blockchain platform, we can see the rendering process, we can see the bidding process, and all those transactions are made transparent, algorithmically hashed, encrypted, and then clouded, right, for adding on later. So as you go out into this world and you're building your projects and your products, I invite you to look at processes that are normally complex and look at ways that you can gamify it, simplify it, and include as many people as possible to co-create with you. It makes for a better product, it makes for a better city, and overall it makes for a better data-driven economy if we can all participate. Thank you.
Thank you. Gamify, simplify, and co-create. It sounds so simple when she says it, does it? But I bet there's a lot of people whose heads are really spinning at the moment. So let's take some questions. We've got one down here.
It's a good area that you have talked about. And most people don't know that when they log in with Google, they are doing some, free job for Google.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is just what you have mentioned. Is this the project that you are talking about? Is itch captcha?
Itch captcha is actually just a security measure. To scramble, I guess, like intelligent AI or hackers, right? Hacking algorithms that try different, combinations of code. No, the underlying technology blockchain, what I'm telling you about, it's at the end of the day, it's a really crappy data structure, right? It's blocky, it's unwieldy, it's not secure. The only thing that it's actually really good at is to bring transparency to transactions and allow peer-to-peer to transact and see exactly measure algorithmically what value that you're putting in, so that if you give value into the system, you can hold that value in hand as a form of cryptocurrency, and no one can mess with it or shut it down or tell you that you don't own it.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thanks. We've got a question up here with the Slido. Can you talk to implementing AI on a new blockchain project versus into a legacy business?
Sure. As any of you know, as you so much as to deploy an HTML website, it's buggy, right? It's going to take a few months. And the worst part of that process is, the legacy thinking of the executives that probably just put in a couple $1 million into an old technology that is now just starting to pay off, right? And legacy crumbling systems, all that code that's old and unstable that needs to be cleaned up, and there's something better out there, but now you have to do like a 3 to 6 month assessment to see what's stable, what's working, and it's just simply better just to build new, right? And so that's one big difference. All of these blocks that you're talking about that have layers of functionality to it, just using on how to direct the traffic of that flow of transactions, it's going to have to be a combination, a polychain solution between private and public blocks, as well as a data management system, right, to keep it secure so there's no one point of failure. And all of those blocks are actually going to need machine learning algorithms to direct it so you can make the most out of your systems, right? You're tracking for patterns of desirable patterns. You're looking for anomaly pattern detection for those outliers where you're detecting fraud. And you're also looking at matching services as to see what partners or what sets of data can be clustered together in the most useful and stratifiable way. Have I answered your question?
I'd love for you to talk a little bit about your work with the UN and sort of share with us what they're thinking about in terms of AI.
Okay. Oh, yeah, sure. So we launched Blockchain for Impact. It started out as an idea 9 months ago. There was about 10 of us that were holding these small workshops. The first one was held at MIT, and it asked climate scientists and physicists, can you retroactively extract carbon dioxide from the Earth's atmosphere? And the answer was a resounding yes. And then are there companies that are doing this that are commercially viable and available? And the answer was also yes. And so we identified 7 of them. They included deep sea kelp beds, as well as Arctic forests. One company made concrete by extracting and multiplying and pressurizing that carbon dioxide. So the second question that we asked is, great, we need 700 of you, not 7 of you. How do we help you scale and create more of you? So then we held a second brainstorm in New York and invited some of America's most active philanthropists and funders and locked them in a room for 7 hours with technologists and physicists and climate scientists. And I just said it was voluntary. Everybody can, come and go as they please. Everybody stayed for 12 hours. And it was decided that with blockchain that makes transactions transparent and the tracking of any kind of data, especially with the power of edge computing, which means that it goes from your device, right, straight up to the cloud, without that latency of sitting on, bouncing from between different servers, that's been a problem. That with that, that we could use machine learning to automate a lot of that detection and to be able to organize it in a much more efficient way. So then I'm like, well, that means that nobody actually owns this data, and if we're all collaborating, then who owns what? What are the new business models of collaboration that now we must consider in order to be able to use this technology efficiently and to serve sustainable development goals in a way that makes sense when it's a group of us that represent the ecosystem of that system that we're trying to serve. So then San Francisco, right, another 12 hours. And then that snowballed into Blockchain for Impact. And because I was part of the early 10 and my passion has always been AI, the way I look at it, machine learning and AI technology is good for productivity. I'm not the first. That was told to me by my friend Omar Busaidi, who is an author in the UAE. Machines are good for productivity and people are meant for creativity. So I saw machine learning in this age of automation an opportunity to allow people to be more human and humane as long as we built the right incentives and the right business models around this technology to make the most of it. And that's why that decentralization is so key, is that if you're decentralized and you're just telling people, look, our incentives are aligned. You put value into the system, I will reward you. And it's all algorithmically determined. I'm not fucking with it at all, right? And then you've got everybody on board.
Have you got any great projects that you're working on now you'd like to talk about?
Oh, sure. So one of my things is that, if you want to keep machine learning human and humane, it has to interact with humans. And now I say this because there's a lot of AI that's being developed without any human consideration or commercial consideration. And they're only trained through GANs networks or adversarial training in networks, which sounds scary, but it's really not. It's more academic. But yeah, they're machines that are allowed to go to the full extent of being machines. And so, again, it goes back to data. And so there's lots of different projects out there that are looking to crowdsource the data. Anything from prediction models for training, the ones that we're most excited about. Let's see, well, there's mine that is crowdsourcing the news and the citations. There's also NeuRealNet. What they do is they crowdsource predictability of accidents and natural disasters and the point at which that we should evacuate people. And they've been astonishingly correct, especially with the people that, they're going from center to center and collating all that data, which is how you get better machine learning. Considering machine learning or AI is like this giant cement mixer, we should all be pouring our data into it, and marking that transaction in some way so that all of our stuff works better.
Fantastic. There's one more question come from the floor. You mentioned getting rewarded for being a good citizen. That sounds a bit like Big Brother. Do you see any risks?
Absolutely. As technologist builders and business people, you must realize that every time you build something, you have to go to the edges of how it can be screwed with and used against your intentions. And then you try to reverse engineer it by building a business model and a transparency model around it so that people actually make more money if they're good actors. So that same facial recognition and that demographic tracking mechanisms that I'm sure you're all aware of on every street corner in London, right? And then you combine it with blockchain, it can either give you tokens for waiting to cross the light and not jaywalking, or it could automatically go into your electric wallet and take money out for jaywalking, right? So then it's like, well, if you know that the system can be messed with, then great, at least make it transparent so I know what you're doing, right? And how do I do that? Well, any kind of data, how it really works is that you take any kind of data, whether that's a picture, signature, document, and when they say put it on blockchains, what they're doing is they're taking a picture of it or they're digitizing in some way. It gets clouded and encrypted. It gets stripped of the metadata, and just the core data itself is then consolidated onto blockchains where that consensus is in some way, depending on exactly what the use case is. So that's why I say it's really important to look at aligned incentives instead of regulation, because regulation has always been 40 years behind business models, business practices, and especially technology. But how about we use a collaborative model of businesses so that I'm not competing with you. I'm just going to say that there's something that you're good at, there's something that I'm good at. I'm going to roll you into my build, and we're going to go move the dial from 0 to 1 faster, as long as everyone's has a piece of the pie and we all know what direction we're moving in. So, yes and no. Do you want to be Alfred Nobel? This stuff isn't new. All these considerations. Alfred Nobel, of course, created dynamite, right? Because he wanted to save lives and time for mines. And instead, it was used as a weapon of war. And to his dying day, it was his great regret, right? So then he started up the Nobel Foundation. So we must always be aware how this can be used, but then let's line business models and incentives so that the more that you mess with it or that you're a bad actor, first it's transparent and you're called out for it, and you'll ultimately make more money by collaborating.
Any other questions from the floor? One down here.
Hi, so very interesting topic for me. As we move into a more sort of digitalized world and people transfer over to this way of trading and transferring value, do you see AI is going to be used as the predominant indicator of wrongdoing or penalties rather than actual humans issuing notices or crime indication?
Sure, that's a really great question, and it's really a frightening one. I think predictive modeling and analytics are being used increasingly more, as are profiling and facial recognition and demographics. Thankfully, they're a little bit wonky and unwieldy, and it's very expensive right now. The accuracy rates aren't that high, but give it another maybe 2 to 3 years, right? The thing is to get in front of it and make it transparent. So the same questions that you're raising, can it be messed with? Can it be weaponized? Or do we know what we're doing? Do governments even understand what it is to be able to regulate it in an intelligent way? All these questions were asked from the time of dynamite to DNA replication in the 80s to the nuclear arms race and now AI and blockchain. And the thing is, if you get in front of it, you make it transparent, sign in a light, and then just keep building for something that's better than what it's normally being used for, right? Never ever forget the World Wide Web was propelled by porn and military. Right.
But get in front of it and make it transparent. That's
Yes.
the key message. Anything else before we give Susan a big round of applause?
Great.
We're incredibly lucky that she dropped into London. She was in Amsterdam and we lured her here. So I really appreciate the fact that she came across. Thanks. Love you.